Thank you, Chairman Cardin. Thanks for holding this important hearing. I was thinking as you were started your comments that if Carper, Capito, Cardin, and Cramer can't solve this problem, nobody in the alphabet can. One of the things I've appreciated most about serving on the Environment and Public Works Committee is the bipartisan consensus we strive to achieve and often do. We often do. It's not very sexy, but we often strive for and achieve consensus. And on a personal note, I've especially enjoyed working with you on legislation to support things like clean nuclear energy, refining our PPP forgiveness process to better serve both lenders and borrowers. And I wanted to serve as a ranking member on this subcommittee to further the cooperation that has historically driven infrastructure policy really over the years and the decades. It's my hope that we can continue the trend by crafting a reauthorization bill that meets the priorities of North Dakotans and Marylanders alike. And despite our geographic and political differences, all of our constituents understand the importance of roads, bridges, and waterways and the role they play in fostering economic development and interstate commerce. No doubt, many of North Dakota's agricultural products make it into Annapolis restaurants, or they are shipped out of the Port of Baltimore, and that benefits both states and everyone in between. My point being, of course, if we keep the main thing, I believe we have a route to success on this reauthorization. That brings us to today's hearing, equity and transportation infrastructure. Mr. Chairman, one of the aspects I appreciate most about EPW is the statutes under our jurisdiction reinforce federalism. Highway policies and projects are coordinated between the state and federal government rather than dictated from the federal government to the states. In fact, Mr. Chairman, I appreciated your comments during our last hearing on the solvency of the Highway Trust Fund. When you had an exchange with a witness regarding how a VMT would fit within a federalist model, it was a great point on your part, and it highlights how we are all very cognizant of the state's role in this equation. Typically, infrastructure projects start from the grassroots, work their way up to the state, and then the federal level. That's why this committee, along with AASHTO and State Department of Transportation officials, which I'm glad to see we have two here today, have consistently supported distributing federal dollars via formula so every state can be responsive to both the interstate commerce needs within their borders and community connectivity issues. My point being, there are multiple examples of poor planning decisions that have led to adverse consequences for specific communities. None of us deny that. And I think we all agree they should be rectified. I believe it should be done at the local and state level where decision makers are closest to the people and able to make a balanced decision. If a new route, expansion, or removal is necessary, that should be done through the state planning process with the formula dollars allotted to them, not a new discretionary grant that pulls from the limited pool of funding within the Highway Trust Fund. That being said, Mr. Chairman, I've always advocated for going big in this infrastructure package. Last Congress, we all supported the passage of the largest highway bill in history, and I have no problem breaking that record again this time around. However, the current proposal to deal with the issue at hand, the Reconnecting Communities Act, introduced by Chairman Carper, would take $15 billion out of the Highway Trust Fund to establish a new discretionary grant. And I don't object to $15 billion being added to an infrastructure package, but how it's dispersed is key. As you all know, the current formula versus discretionary split is roughly 90% formula to 10% discretionary. That is the policy today, and retaining it is one of the top requests from AASHTO and many members of this committee, including me. If we were to pass the Reconnecting Communities Act while following the current 90 to 10 distribution, it would require $135 billion be added to the formula side of the ledger. Similarly, rather than creating a new discretionary grant, if we were to distribute the proposed $15 billion via traditional formula, we would not be picking winners and losers among states. Rather, this would allow each of them the flexibility to be responsive to their communities. If we went this route, it equates to roughly $95 million to North Dakota and millions, if not billions, in the case of California, more for every other state in the Union. It goes without saying, but federal highways exist for interstate commerce. Planning decisions to reroute or remove portions of the system should not be made lightly and should take into account every interested party and the potential repercussions or even unintended consequences of those actions. Again, I would reiterate, the state is best equipped to manage these requests, not a federal bureaucrat parsing through grant applications, determining which applicant meets the political objectives of whoever is in charge. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, the most prominent examples I have seen are in urban settings, as you described. But if you put the issue of equity in a rural context, those communities are not struggling with obtrusive infrastructure that gets in the way. Rather, they're dealing with a lack of infrastructure connectivity. H.R. 2 and the Reconnecting Communities Act both limit new capacity or new miles being added to the system, effectively shutting out rural and tribal communities who need more new access, not less. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and I look forward to discussing these issues and listening to the witnesses before us.
Senator Cramer, thank you for those comments, particularly our ability to find a way to work together, which has been the history of the Environment and Public Works Committee. I agree with you completely. Just as a way of background, I served 20 years in the state legislature, 8 years as Speaker, and served on President Reagan's Federalism Task Force. So I share your strong belief that decisions made at the local level on transportation are certainly the best decisions. We do have interstate and national priorities, but we very much have to protect the ability of local communities to make those decisions. So thank you very much for your comments, and I look forward to working with you. All four of our witnesses today are very distinguished. They're appearing before this committee virtually. They're not here in person. So we will try to use the technology the best that we possibly can. And most of the members that are going to be participating on this committee will also be doing it virtually. So I hope that we all can bear with the technology. Let me introduce two of our witnesses, then I'll recognize Senator Cramer to introduce the two other witnesses that we have on the panel today. Tokes Omishkin is the director of the California Department of Transportation. We have a director, a state director, which I think can give us some very important information. But the director also has on his resume, he's a graduate from the University of Maryland, College Park, which to me shows good sense on his undergraduate degree. Also, founder of a planning consulting firm in the D.C. area, so knows the D.C. area very, very well. Veronica Davis is the Director of the Transportation and Drainage Operations, City of Houston. We welcome her to the committee to give us the perspective from Houston. She also served in the Nashville transportation, so has a broad experience in local government and understands the multimodal challenges that we have. Now let me recognize Senator Cramer to introduce the last two witnesses, and then we'll turn it over to Director Omishkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Dr. Stephen Polzin is with us today, and he completed his appointment as a Senior Advisor for Research and Technology in the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Research and Technology at the Department of Transportation in early 21. And previous to that, he served as Director of Mobility Policy Research at the Center for Urban Transportation Research, University of South Florida. Prior positions included working for transit agencies in Chicago, Cleveland, and Dallas, and has experience in the frontline agencies involved in carrying out and complementing transportation services, and has served on the Board of Directors for Hillsborough Area Regional Transit Authority and on the Hillsborough County Metropolitan Planning Organization Board. His professional interests include transportation policy, imagine that, travel behavior and travel demand, transportation system performance, travel data analysis, transportation decision-making, and public transportation. In July of this year, Dr. Polzin will assume a position of research professor, Tomnet University Transportation Center, School of Sustainable Engineering and the Built Environment, Arizona State University in Tempe. Dr. Polzin is a civil engineer with a BSCE from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and master's and PhD degrees in civil engineering with a focus on transportation from Northwestern University. And I look forward to learning from his federal and academic experience. Bill Panos is my friend and the North Dakota Director of Transportation, and formerly served in the same role for Wyoming. So probably Senator Lummis could introduce him even better than me. I would also note that while Bill is with the North Dakota Department of Transportation, his testimony has been agreed to and is on behalf of 5 rural states, including North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. So welcome, Bill, and thanks to you for sharing your expertise with the committee today. And since coming to North Dakota, Bill has been a breath of fresh air, providing excellent advice and help to me and to my team. I've had the pleasure of bringing multiple North Dakota witnesses to EPW, and I've been looking forward to getting Bill's expertise before EPW, and look forward to his expertise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again, and Director Panos, thanks again for being here and representing the rural perspective on a topic that's usually associated, obviously, with larger urban areas. And your testimony highlighted rural disadvantaged communities are often simply looking to get connected in the first place, as opposed to the many urban examples that are looking to reconnect. Can you, I'm going to ask you first of all to explain briefly that distinction, why it's important in rural areas like North Dakota, but at the same time, ask you to comment specifically on the Reconnecting Communities Act as is being discussed today as a potential solution to some of these inequities. And based on the parameters within the bill that I know you've read and from your time in North Dakota and Wyoming, can you think of any examples of projects that would have qualified for the construction grants as designed in this bill?
Chairman Cardin, Senator Cramer, thank you so much for the question, and by the way, for this opportunity. You know, in states like North Dakota, the connection to school and healthcare or job is unlikely to be, you know, traversed by a short bus ride or walking. What many in metro areas would call long distances are frequently involved in day-to-day travel here in rural states. And improved and safer roads can mean a connection to a job or other essentials in a more reasonable, or at least a less unreasonable time frame. Improved roads help farmers get our crops to the grain elevators, more efficiently and safely. And to answer the second part of your question, you know, based on my reading of the Reconnecting Community Acts, I can't recall any projects in either Wyoming or North Dakota that would qualify for it in its current form. Although applicability may be unlikely, a close review of the specific facts, I think, will be appropriate at a time when the grant program's put together. And you know, I would say that it's basically as currently written, and some of our concerns are not geared to address rural circumstances, but more urban circumstances. But I think we pointed out both in our written testimony and oral testimony ways that we can improve it so that we can take full advantage across the country in all states for this important work. And so it's really, I think it's really a significant point to say that, and to not lose this point, that poor planning decisions have led to adverse circumstances for specific communities, and that includes rural communities and rural states. For us, it's about reconnecting these communities, and in some cases connecting them so that they can participate in a normal daily life and a normal daily economy. And it's particularly true when we talk about the link between transportation and our agricultural economy, our energy economy, and our tourism economy here in North Dakota. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it's very helpful. I might drill down a little bit, both with you, Director Panos and Omashakin, since you both have experience in very different states, but similar experiences. And one of you, and maybe it was you, Bill, who testified to what the formula would look like if we were to apply the $15 billion and you know, to the formula. So if Congress distributed the $15 billion via the existing formula programs, it would equate to about $95 million for North Dakota and $1.4 billion for California over 5 years. That's if we were going to, you know, just do it per formula. So for planning and budgetary certainty, would you prefer, and I'd ask Director Omashakin first and then Director Panos, would you prefer guaranteed and increased funding? Or would you rather want to gamble with the application process for a DOT grant?
Did you, Senator Cramer?
No spin there, sir. No.
Senator Cramer, it sounds like you used the word gamble. So for us, you know, the tradition for state DOTs has long been the use of the formula program. I mean, it's a part of our history to understand, just like you said, Senator, in this particular case, we would get roughly 1.4, $1.5 billion. But we're also, we don't mind taking advantage of a competitive grant program. We have been successful in the past in programs like the Tiger program or Infra program, the various programs that have come out of USDOT. The state of California has been very competitive in those programs to be able to still bring money into the state. So we will be prepared either way, whether it be a formula type of program where we would be guaranteed over $1 billion, or a grant program. We believe in California we will be competitive either way. Thank you for that, Senator Cramer.
Yeah, as my time has run out, maybe Bill, I'll restate the question a little different. How has North Dakota fared under the infra grant program that was part of the FAST Act?
We've never received an infra grant. We're one of the very few states that has not, and so I think that we definitely prefer badly needed formula funding in rural states across the country due to our population size and our participation in this amazing interstate highway system that we have in our country. And so we think that states can deliver it more quickly than a discretionary grant program, and it can be moved for a variety of needs throughout the country that relate to the topic of today's hearing, which is an important topic.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.